Greetings, fellow 11th Street kids. Bluedragonfive here.
And Rohith Dhar.
And we're back. It's been an exciting season. We are talking the season and potentially series finale of Peacemaker,
Mm-hmm.
season 2. So, yeah, a lot of people have many opinions about this last episode because, frankly, episode 7, it's probably my favorite of the season. I was delighted by it. I was blown away by it. I think we really nailed it. We had what again was kind of a thing of we could have ended the season there, and then people would have come back in droves for what we pick up next. And it was kind of an exciting thing going into episode 8, having no idea, I don't know where we're going next, aside from maybe some light setup and stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much. Well, I mean, it's kind of what we got. We got kind of some light setup and stuff. It's an epilogue of a finale for sure. We had the meat and potatoes, and this was kind of like where we leave everything. So,
Mm-hmm.
how you coming down on it, Rohit?
I think this episode overall, it it feels indicative of the strain I think James Gunn was under in writing this Creature Commander season 1 and Superman all in one go. He wrote over 200 pages of material, and I feel like of the three, Superman is the one that has the least flaws in my view. Whereas I think for Creature Commander season 1 and Peacemaker season 2, I think the crunch in which James Gunn had to write all this material, the flaws and cracks that are, I think more so in season 1 of Creature Commandos, but I think in this season especially, this finale, there are things that I like in isolation, but when paired with sort of the preceding 7 episodes, it just makes me have it just makes certain critiques that I had of the show come more in the forefront. And I think overall, this season is just a step down for the first season. Outside of acting and certain character beats, I think just the overall plot and cohesion of the season is just not as strong as the first season. And I think the two separate plots of the Earth X storyline and the stuff with Argus under Rick Flag Senior, it doesn't connect or parallel or intersect in interesting ways as the two plot lines from first season with the butterflies and Chris's dad. So I think while there may be stronger emotional moments in season 2, I feel like the overall structure, plot, and just thematic depth in which certain ideas intersect and mingle through character interactions and dynamics wasn't as strong, I think, as the first season. I think this season 2 reminds me of the flaws that were in Guardians 2, but I feel like Guardians 2, because of it being a future film, was forced James Gunn to really prioritize, being lean in his plots and not be as indulgent as he was at certain points. I think in this season, especially in this last episode, his certain artistic indulgences, I feel like, got the better of him. And I hope that the fact that he wrote Man Tomorrow just by itself and not with other stuff going around, I hope he's able to kind of hone in and be more focused and a little discerning as a writer.
Yeah, I mean, overall, just before we get started, I mean, in comparison to season 1, I do feel season 1 had a far better finale than this season. I don't want to be. I'm not. A lot of people are maybe coming down a little harshly because there's a lot of expectation. I do really think James Gunn, as much it's such a unique position. I mentioned this before. I love the communication he has with the fan base. I think it's something really cool and something we haven't quite had with kind of I know like a showrunner, like I guess broadly kind of like the head of a universe, kind of like a lead producer, kind of like kind of a creative head of a whole cinematic universe. Before we've never had this kind of like Feige. He loves a tease, but beyond that, Feige's never really. His whole thing is secrecy. James Gunn, he's pretty much an open book, but he's keeping like the nuggets to himself. But he's a direct hype man, and I still have applauded this throughout the season of our recaps as a resource and just as like kind of touch and base with the man himself. I love the whole Insider podcast that he did with Peacemaker, like basically the rewatch podcast and basically the episode recaps between the new episodes. I found that to be a very enriching, very great, and you get a sense you kind of know the people and the man behind the product, and it's been really great. And with that said, though, whether intentionally or not, it feels like he hyped the episodes around the big standout, whether by design or not. Like Seven to me felt like the one he didn't talk at all about, which had all the amazing stuff in it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he kept saying 6 and 8, and I don't believe me. I know the bits thanks to the podcast and everything. I know the bits that I really loved in those episodes, but it really did not feel like 8 was like as massive as he kind of suggested. And again, by design, or just kind of maybe to him it seemed a little bigger than it ultimately was, in a
I,
vacuum.
I mean, if I were to defend James Gunn or try to contextualize what he means, I think from how he views storytelling and what he finds meaningful, I think episode 68 were the biggest, not because of any particular plot points, but the emotional dynamics. I think
Yeah,
those are the episodes where the actors really, and I felt like maybe if you articulate it that way, I think people would have understood that, like, hey, this is not, these last 3 episodes are not going to be like a game changer. I mean, there is maybe a potential game changing with sort of the whole, salvation plan of it all. But I think what James Gunn really, I think he really loves the 11th Street kids and he loves the actors he works with.
yeah,
But I think, in my view, I think the fact that Adebayo and Adrian, the fact that they've kind of been sidelined and put in the back burner while people like Harcourt and Economos have been elevated. I really like their characters. I really like the focus on them. But it feels like the overall 11th Street Kid focus that was throughout the first season, it kind of gets lost in the second season. And so with this episode, where we have like specific character like revelations or like heart to hearts, it kind of rings hollow, not because the actors don't do a good job, but it feels like to me it's like Adebayo's whole thing, the two separate emotional points with her in regards to her letting go of her wife, in regards to pouring her heart out for Chris. These are great in isolation, but for me, it's like if Adebayo is thinking that, hey, my calling is to be a spy, it just feels weird to me that throughout the season she hasn't really done much significant spy work. She's done much more the first season. If anything, Economos is kind of more in the spy game, especially the fact that he's working with Argus, the little spy agency. Like oftentimes when we focus on Adebayo, she's just struggling to make her spy agency work. I think it's weird that it didn't try to make the points like, hey, Adebayo can get shit done and maybe do a few odd jobs here and there. She has the skills, but just not the resources. But we just never get to see her skills utilized in the way that I think they were done more artfully so in the first season. And so the big emotional touch points for her in this episode just don't feel like they're earned because we haven't necessarily spend a lot of time without a bio throughout the season, I feel.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, when we get to the end of the season, it really felt like I did think a lot of 2 was an upgrade. It benefited from the idea that Peacemaker has really evolved as a character and we're getting some really great, deep, and emotional stuff. And of course, John Cena's performance, like you said, the performances on the 11th Street Kids again elevated. And it's definitely what James Gunn's really kind of like really thriving on this
Yeah.
season. But and a lot of that up to 8 is really. I'm not saying we don't have that in 8, but it's really driven by that, and we have some really great moments that lead up to that. And I think everything, when you don't know what the end payoff is, again, there's kind of a hype that kind of goes into it. And when we get to 8, it's just very much like we're checking boxes as to where do we leave these characters, and then it makes you realize, okay, maybe certain payoffs or certain directions we didn't fully go into like we should have.
Yeah.
And it's like for me though, again, I didn't really see any of those faults until the last episode. So it's like kind of de facto, it's like episode 8. I think when you want, I'd have to watch it all again to know for sure. But it really feels like it's the weakest, not a bad episode, it's the
It
weakest of the
feels
bunch.
it retroactively makes the other prior episodes feel disjointed because it feels to me, and I don't know how James Gunn went is. It feels like he went episode by episode, and he says he went episode by episode writing. but just feels like the way it reads overall, it feels like he has an emotional ending point with those three kids. It didn't really work to like have these characters touch base throughout the entire season to have that emotional base like really pay off. It feels to me that maybe he saw these journeys more differently and what's shown on the screen. Like I feel like I know where James Gunn is coming from. I feel like he may have seen certain things with Adebayo and Adrian throughout the season that make their their appearances at the end really meaningful. But with the way the show is, it's like hardcore didn't con much of the standouts, and I feel like it should be a whole raw ensemble. And also, and I feel like this might be a hot take on my part, Dragon. So hear me out on this. Is it me or does Vigilante feel like now he's become the Drax of Peacemaker?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, he's always kind of the Drax, and he's always kind of like the fun standout, from Peacemaker. I mean, I don't think he was. I don't think it's inconsistent what we got.
No, it's not. I don't think Drax was inconsistent either. I just feel like with Guardians 1, and I think actually in defense of Guardians 2 to a certain extent, I feel like Drax has become more comfortable with the crew and this is able to be more goofier. And that one moment I really love for Guardians 2 is when he has that interaction with Mantis about, oh, my wife will like you or whatever. It's like, oh, why? Because I'm ugly? Or it's like, no, because you're innocent.
Yeah.
And I just feel like for Vigilante, he doesn't have any of that, which is crazy to me because I remember I think one of my favorite moments from season 1 is when Vigilante's picked up by Harcourt after he screwed up, like trying to like intimidate or stop Chris's dad.
Well, he tried to kill
He
Peacemaker.
tried to kill Chris's dad. Yeah, he tried to kill Augie. He screws up and he's picked up by Harcourt and he comes in and it's like, did I just mess things up? And Harcourt's like uncharacteristically to a certain
Very
extent, like,
compassionate in that moment.
yeah, and
Silence,
that
really nice.
I really like that. And I just feel like we don't have any of that in season 2. And in season 2, we just have him like failing at animal facts, um, having just more of him being the violent sociopath and being mean to his mom.
Yeah, you're right. We don't really. I got to admit, going into the last episode, given what happened in 7 with him killing Augie of Earth X,
Mm-hmm.
I really thought the direction we were going in was two things I was expecting. I think a lot of people might have been speculating. Me and my like coworker buddy were doing our water cooler talk on Fridays after watching Peacemaker. The big speculation was okay. Look, either we did you arrive at the same destination essentially with this, but I'm saying either there was a switcheroo with the vigilantes, which very easily there could have been. There wasn't, but there could have been.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like the speculation between 8 and 7, I'm like, okay, and then basically the end result being Peacemaker will have like a vigilante that he's at odds with, either because he's the vigilante from the other Earth, or just playing it straight as we kind of ultimately have. Peacemaker is going to have some trauma that is very much linked to what Vigilante did. He blew up, kind of like him getting kind of this familial connection despite all the horrible stuff that's happened, and he just as he killed the version of his father that he always wanted. And I think Vigilante might feel there might be a rift there, and that might turn him against Peacemaker like the other Vigilante was. And that's kind of what I was going to maybe expect, because that kind of made sense that even just saying it's the real Vigilante, that our Vigilante that did that, he and Peacemaker, they're probably gonna have a falling out, and I think Vigilante's gonna be really hurt by that. And we didn't do
Well,
any.
wasn't it not Earth 2 Vigilante that killed Augie?
Well, it's a little hard to tell. I mean,
I know, like,
Well, here's the thing: from the sounds of it, that Vigilante said, "Yeah, John was tied up." So that the presumption is, and you could always play with that too about which one was, and then you just kind of admitted one way or another which Vigilante did. To me, it seemed like our Vigilante was the one that he mistook. Oh my God, he's tied up Johnny Conmos, and there's Peacemaker, my buddy. I'm going to save him.
I thought it would be.
I mean, either way, I
think
think it works, but still, I think it's directly him.
I think it was R2 Vigilante.
It's
Because I feel like
possible.
because if it wasn't, then I feel like I don't think James Gunn wouldn't have overlooked that detail and I have at least some level of a conversation about it.
It's a little hard to tell because again, that Vigilante does say something in reference to
I'm
the
pretty
misunderstanding.
sure as he like stabs him, it's like Sons of Liberty.
Oh
That's
no,
how.
no, 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 no! He says "Sons of Liberty" right before they. not before they go through the portal, but essentially like they go through the doorway to where the portal is, and essentially it's the whole like your Sons of Liberty, and he's shooting up the place. So that's when he says it. He doesn't say that right after he killed him. But I miss that. All I'm saying is, look, we don't really get. I don't think we get a definitive answer, but I don't know. I still think him like mentioning John being tied up in the chair implies that the our vigilante did that, and it's a missed opportunity. We don't even have a discussion about which vigilante did it. Regardless, the fact that we want to have like a moment acknowledging that one way or another.
Okay. Well, I guess in either way, that also reveals another problem where just like, for all intents and purposes, it didn't feel like Earth X really impacted this season as much as it should have.
Yeah, concentrating Earth X. Well, do you mean the reveal of Earth X, or just like all the Earth X stuff? Period.
I think it's just like, I think the fact that the twist came out way to the end of the season, I think that hurts. Not having, I think Autobio having to kind of be put in the back burner because of the Earth X stuff. I think that was a detriment to both her and the overall plot. Because imagine if Chris had come into the universe with an episode 1 or 2, and the reveal came out within episode 3 and 4, and then there was the aftermath of that in episode 5 and 6, and then 7, 8 we come back, they come out to their own universe and deal with the whole Argus of it all. Because then at that point, like, I just feel like that's a little bit more cohesive rather than just kind of having a few episode stretch where they're just trying to, like, Argus just trying to find a door, trying to find Chris, and Economos is trying to like play delay, and Chris is just kind of hopping around in the universe. And fans already knew that it was going to be Earth X, so I feel like the twist kind of happening as late as it did, it just didn't work to benefit the overall story. Because the thing is, when you look at the first season, when you think of the butterfly's plot, it's like they're trying to come in and save the world because this world is so broken, to did not deal with climate change, with war, with prejudice, all that stuff. And the fact that it's alongside a separate plot of Chris and the elementary kids like trying to not get killed by like white supremacists, the things that are one of the reasons why the butterflies would try to take over the world. Like, those were interesting things. And the finale, like, of that first season is informed and influenced by those things. Whereas for the finale of this season, it doesn't feel like it's informed and influenced by the other plot. Because think of this way, Dragon. Imagine if it doesn't like. Imagine if Rick and Argus was made aware of like what the other universe was. Like, would you not have found it interesting for Rick Senior to like use that as justification or just as a line of attack against Chris? It's like, hey,
sent in GI Robot.
Well, not even the GI Robot part, but just on a character level, it's like he hates this guy for killing his son under the orders of Waller, and his form of paradise and happiness is being in a universe that is run by the freaking Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't believe that Rick Senior was never made aware of that directly and never used that as a line of attack. And I think it's interesting that like Autobio just kind of hand waves away, but it's like he's an idiot to certain. And I know Autobio would say that. I know she would defend it. It just weird there's not a discussion or like, I feel like more could have been made in terms of Chris being so ignorant to that, right? It's like, yeah, Chris is generally trying to do good. He's trying to be empathetic and all that stuff. But there's these biases that led to him, or these like oversights or things, that were just right there that he didn't pay attention to. And I feel like that those are faults and defects that should be, remarked upon. And I feel like I'm not trying to make too many comparisons to Guardians 2, but I feel like Guardians 2, like when both Peter and Rocket were being jerks or have like deficiencies in their, demeanor, like, yeah, the other characters were there to really point that out and put them to stand. And I feel like Chris just was never really put to stand or have him to take into account, like, why is it that in this world with such blatant, fascist imagery and just the overall like vibe, that Chris wasn't curious enough to how this world operates the way it did. And I think because think about how the beginning of the season is, where he's like self-reflecting, thinking about how his trauma like shaped his life to like lash out at violence. He's very eloquent. He's very thoughtful. Where was that Chris when he goes to the Earth X?
Now,
Like,
here's the thing. In his defense, and I did really have to think on this because initially, the big issue I had, I thought episode 6 was really good as well, but then I loved 6 until the very end where we had the gag with like the one big swastika over instead of the stars on the flag, in which to me it felt like, okay,
or the Hitler mural.
I'm getting there.
Gotcha.
So we had that in 6.
Mhm.
And then we get the opening of 7, which is my favorite episode this season. Then we get the 7 is like we do call it out and we do address him. We kind of write it off as like, okay, this is Peacemaker yet again, kind of because of his upbringing and realize it. But with coupling that with the defense being, he was only there for like at best 3 days, really like 2.5 days, and like one of the really is like it's not even like full days. He was there for like okay, let's see, he was there for like an afternoon.
Mhm.
He's basically there constantly at night indoors. He's out in the world for like an afternoon, and then he's in Argus for about, I don't know, maybe less than that. I would say like a day and a half, but really in terms of how long he's indoors. But in that time, not noticing the little things. Obviously, one big thing being that Hitler mural. Again, because he's in there for such a scarce amount of time, and yes, and he can't completely be well balanced. He is getting there tremendously a long way by the start of the season, what he goes through. And if
Yeah.
he is blinded by a lot of the great things that are happening in this universe, it does I can cut it slack because of that. And plus there were some obvious jokes. Like James Gunn had a thing where apparently we were going to see all the mustaches in this world were Hitler mustaches, and they're practical, by the way. Which all these poor guys who shot as
Mhm.
like extras, they had to have Hitler mustaches go, for a while while they were filming, and they had to cut that because he realized, you know what, it's a little too broad. The other stuff can be more hand waved away as a joke. I still really wish, to me, it would have made the flag and the thing there. I love acknowledging like Mein Kampf and every desk because that makes sense to me. It's like a Peacemaker. Well, that's a detail he wouldn't notice. World's greatest detective, he's not clearly. Um, Flag though, making it one big swastika versus like all 50, the 50 stars being tiny swastikas. That I would have liked. From a distance seems normal. Up close, this is sick and wrong.
Oh, that's a good point. I wasn't thinking that because it's like, yeah,
The
it's a
mural is a bit much, but that's bleeding into the gag once we've established, okay, so in the time that he was here, he was too distracted by everything and like the brief times he's been at Argus to really notice.
yeah.
So at the end of the day, to me that's a miracle exception. I can at least justify somewhat for the time that he was there, and he's overwhelmed with a lot of other distracting emotions, and he's happy, and he's made a choice, and he's been there. He's only been like in a place with flags and everything for like a day.
Sure.
I
But
don't know.
then at that point, it's like, why even highlight the whole? Hey, you didn't see this part because at that point, you're just kind of making Chris out to be more of an idiot than he really should be. Because if he's only been there for a few days, like, and if these were details that probably the average person wouldn't notice, like what, like, because at that point, because the whole gag is like, oh, like how the fuck did I notice that? And I was like, well, the whole point is like we're making Chris out to be this big idiot. Well, if he's only been a few days, like, and it would be, and these were details that maybe the average person would notice, then the punchline shouldn't be that Chris is a big idiot.
Right.
Like it should be the case that like, hey, like if the other character says like, oh, I didn't notice that, and it would have been like, because the thing is, I remember James Gunn mentioned that like there were some people or even a lot of people that didn't like catch the twist or predicted it.
Yeah, that was like kind of the
But
age of the internet culture. They all figured it out way before.
yeah, but the thing is that the fact that it was so easy to tell, I wish the twist was done earlier because then we would have spent time dealing with the ramifications of the twist and how like, okay. And I think the thing goes, it's like Chris had to lead the universe. I think he's forced to lead the universe because of what happens with like his dad being killed, with Keith being mauled and Adebayo be that universe because he fundamentally cares about Adebayo.
Well, remember, he made a very deliberate choice once he found it's Nazis. He knew that was wrong. That was like
Because like Earth 2 hardcore, Earth X hardcore was like, hey, yeah, this woman is a doppelganger or whatever. So it's
well,
like,
remember, he had a moment. That's his big decision when he could side with a hardcore. Had he really, But again, he instinctively knew, okay, Nazis bad. He knew,
no,
okay, I'm going my hardcore.
honestly, it would have been interesting if maybe Chris, through some level of reasoning, discovered the twist on his own, and then had a choice of whether to go back into his regular universe or Earth X if it was just him, right? Because I think the fact that he's with our hardcore and Autobot, like our LSU kids are in the Earth X universe, like the circumstances are forced where he has to leave to protect these people. But if he was aware of the twist, if he finds out about it and the time he spends there, he then has a choice because there's not the people that he cares about aren't in immediate danger. So I think it would be interesting for him to wrestle with: do I accept to live in a universe where I have my family, but other people are living a life of suffering, and because of my background, I have a life of privilege, or do I go back intentionally to where my friends are? Even though my life isn't great, because I care about living a life, living a moral life, and being with my friends. I think that would be really interesting for Chris to tackle with, right? Because I think the way the circumstances are, it's like I think it wouldn't look right on Chris to him to have any doubts, and because his friends are there in the universe, he's going to protect them and then go back with them because the friends were willing to come to see him and then and bring them back. If his friends didn't come back at that time and he found out about the twist, I think it would be really interesting for him to wrestle with and him intentionally choose to go back to that universe and then hijinks happen or whatever. But the fact that 11 Street Kids came in, I feel like the circumstances were forced to where he would have to leave Earth X. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, 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 that's a good point. I mean, a part of it would have been like, I mean, you could maybe reason that he could have said, okay, look, I'll take care of this doppelganger Amelia Harcourt and just send her on her merry way, like through the portal, or make a case for like, okay, look, she wandered from another universe, I'll send her back. So maybe not immediate danger until then stuff like what's happening with Adebayo. That's when things really would have like, okay, that's when he has to make it. Honestly, going into 7, I really thought that it was going to be the thing where Keith had his hands on Adebayo, and that would have been like the reveal, like, oh god, it's all crumbling around. Or he finds out what's happened, and he's going to have to make a choice right then and there.
Yeah, but the thing is, that situation, like, it would be hard for me to think that Chris wouldn't, sign to save Adebayo and go back to his original universe.
Like, that's the right choice to make, though.
Yeah, but the thing was that he already made that choice in the end of season 1. So I think it would be interesting to have make a different to be in a different moral situation where he's not actively in danger of being found out of being the not real Peacemaker of Earth X, but he can like would someone like Peacemaker, if those two kids hadn't immediately come to try to save him, or they were in the process but they weren't there, and he found out about Earth X, do you think Chris would struggle with whether he stays in Earth X or comes back to his original universe?
Let's see. So if he wasn't under pressure, I mean, look, obviously he would have considered staying, but it's like an inevitability of like, okay, look, at some point somebody's going to find out. Like any liar reveal, they're always going to know, okay, like you're
Well,
not the real.
I mean, and
But
so
then that
far,
begs the question, though. Like, eventually, though, would it be in a position of like if he genuinely tells, Augie's character, like, okay, look, this is what happened. Like, would Augie have his back, like he did, in the episode that we had, where like,
well,
okay,
I
so he's
mean, for all intents and purposes, like even though he acts a little different, like most of like his dad and especially Earth X, I mean, they really like how
at some point he would have found out about the camps. All right, at some point he would have had to have found out.
No. If he was aware of the Nazis having taken over with the flags or whatever, and if he even knows the history, like, yeah, okay, but if he knows about the camps at that time or later on, it's like, does he choose to leave his cool dad, his brother, and his relationship with Amelia to go back to his crappy universe with even though he has really solid friends, like what does he do you like? I would love to see the struggle because I can imagine Gunn and Cena doing a really good job with that. But I wish we would have done that. And then if Peacemaker chose to go back to his original universe, inspire the advantages to him both personally and systematically as a white man, that I think would speak volumes to his character. Whereas in this, it's like Peacemaker is someone who goes by emotion and like friendship, and that was the decisions that led to him to like stop the butterflies at the end. But I think it was interesting to where he's given all that he could be afforded personally and systematically, and he chooses no because he values his friends that much and he wants to be a genuinely good person. Then I think would have been really valuable and would have solidified him being a hero that even if he's not seen as a hero by the people of the regular DC universe, we would see him as that. Whereas in this case, it's like, yeah, he did the right thing, but he was kind of forced to do the right thing because the 11th Street kids were in Earth X.
All
He
right,
wouldn't.
Red. I think we're kind of going in circles on this one. We haven't even talked about the episode yet. Can we
No,
do
no, no.
that?
I totally get that, but I just kind of wish, like, with the whole thing about Peacemaker feeling like he's trying to make all these efforts to be a hero and not being perceived as that, I think him being able to be aware of that without Lone Street Kids being involved and being in danger and choosing to come back of his own accord would have been really powerful.
Okay.
But yeah,
All right. Yeah. So I like the flashback structure of this season, which I think for the most part, I think almost every episode. I forget which episode, if it was 6 or 7. I guess 6 is the one where we. No, wait, no, 7. 7's the one in which we broke that. Yeah, I think it was. God, it was 6 or. No, it was 6. It was 6 because then we find out about the Nazi thing. Yeah, 6 is where we just kind of had like the post kaiju battle.
mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah. So here we have the flashback to the much talked about boat date. Where basically, after Hardcore's recovery in the first season, they were hanging out. They went to Big Belly Burger. They had a night, some charming bits in there, like her drawing, Peacemaker with like the condensation on the straw.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the bit where Chris is like stopping her from beating up the freckle guy.
Yeah.
Yep. I gotta admit though, it is a bit of a missed opportunity. I know we use them later on quite effectively, but to some degree, it feels like a missed opportunity not using Foxy Shazam on like the rock boat,
The Rock Cruise, yeah.
the rock cruise, yeah. Just because it would have been like a perfect, it would have been like the great payoff to like we'll keep opening with Foxy Shazam, and it would have been great. If, like, okay, that was the song from this moment. That's how we transition into the thing.
I think it works as like a good payoff.
No, it's still a good payoff. I'm just saying
Yeah.
it would have been kind of neat, like as the oh my god, it's like a
As like the
direct.
transition, and then you transition into the no, you have Fox Shazam, and
Mhm.
then as they start singing, then the intro starts.
Yeah,
That would, yeah, I see your point.
yeah. So, Peacemaker, he's in prison. He refuses to see his friends in order to protect him because he's the effing angel of death, which everyone scoffs at. Did you catch the detail? Like, so it was like a pigeon or something around his window. Now, do you think that's a prime eagle payoff there,
I feel like it was sort of
or just
not like
birds like him? Like, what do you?
I mean, I think it's just kind of a simple like Peacemaker's cage, while the bird represents like symbolizes freedom. And also I think back to kind of like the Suicide Squad, the opening where Savant is just like playing out with the ball, and then he
Right.
uses the ball to hit that one bird.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. So let's talk about kind of the so we kind of see the status quo after Peacemaker sacrifice at the end of last episode where he surrendered himself. He gave Rick Flag the alien portal, which basically was like a bargaining chip of like, look, they talked me to come in, so they all get their jobs back.
Mm-hmm.
So we see Argus now. They're sending teams in through the doorway to explore the 99 doors under the guise of looking for habitable worlds, resources of population. At least that's what the party line is. So we have Harcourt, Fleury and company going through, just exploring these doors. And Economist and Harcourt, they've been kind of looking after John Economist essentially has been tasked with like looking after Eagly in the interim as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, so the exploration of the 99 doors. This is the thing everyone was really excited about, based on like little trailers and teasers and everything, like little like teaser for the finale, and of course we saw like a giant skull with like legs. A lot of people are thinking, "Oh my god, Brainiac!" Wasn't, obviously. I didn't think it was going to be, but I'm saying it was like, okay, this was maybe it was the potential of like some big, kind of Easter egg. So that's always kind of the sign of it. Not even James
Mhm.
Gunn kind of seems to have kind of fallen prey to just a little bit. It's like it's the multiverse of madness issue. It's the whole the eye we've literally opened the door to the multiverse, or opened the door to other dimensions, and it's like everyone's mind runs wild with all the possibilities. And really, it's a TV budget. There's only so much we can do, so much
Well,
we don't want to run into anything.
and also like James Gunn as a storyteller isn't into using the multiverse just to do cool cameos,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like the whole point of Earth X is like,
Well,
hey,
then again, he kind of has done. He did that just a skosh in Guardians too with the Watchers, but
well, I mean, that was kind of payoff to like a one visual gag,
yeah,
what as but I think in terms of like, hey, this is like so and so actor and so character, he doesn't do those kind of cameos
right.
that the multiverse is typically used to do. But I
I'm just
think
saying, in the grand scheme, I think that's why another reason people really coming down hard in the episode. They had a lot of expectation with this 99 doors, and
no, I think for all intents and purposes, the multiverse was used to the extent that it had Chris, going into a dream world, like his world, like
hmm
it's kind of it's less in line with typical multiverse superhero stories and more in line with, like, let's say a character has these aspirations and dreams of wanting a different life. You go to bed, they wake up in a different life, and things are all good, but things that from their old life, that they relied upon and maybe should have valued are crappy, and so they had to make a decision whether they stay in the dream world or go back to their old world. So that I think the multiverse was used in that aspect, which I think is a worthwhile way to utilize the multiverse
yeah,
from a character perspective. But I think for fans, like I think maybe there could have been a little bit more of a direct conversation from Gunn to fans, say, hey, the multiverse, you need to utilize the multiverse. This is to further Chris's story and not to open opportunities for characters or storylines or things to be referenced or brought in for a second or two. I mean
right.
that not to say that Gunn necessarily like hit the ball or didn't make that the case, but I feel like it would have been better for that to be more forceful in the marketing and all that stuff. But fans are gonna be fans.
Well, that's true. So the imps. So okay, in part, I mean, look, I know it's consistent with what they said in when they were reminiscing in the I guess it was episode. We're in the yeah, I think it's
The
episode.
first or second episode, yeah.
I'm trying. Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to remember like when he was able to chat with Augie and Keith. Was Keith in episode one or two? I think in one.
No, he was in episode one.
Okay, so Keith was in one. I'm just remembering. So they went there, and then he went back, and they got in the altercation with the other Peacemaker. So that was the end of one.
Yeah, yeah.
Then. Okay. All right. So I want to make sure it wasn't like in two some. Hey, but anyway. So point being, I know they mentioned the run, and that essentially the story goes that Chris, when he was younger, he went through the door, and he basically went to this Candyland looking door, and to get like a giant peppermint stick, and
Yeah.
the imps followed him through, and it was like this whole thing. So yes, these imps are consistent with that. When you say imps in a DC property, though, especially after we for all intents and purposes, we name dropped an imp. We didn't say Mixie, but I mean, come on. We heavily alluded to Mixie Spitalik and Superman. I'm thinking that's what I was thinking with the imps when we mentioned those guys. And we didn't do it. I'm not saying I'm not super disappointed or anything. I know it's we could always do like a fifth dimensional imp thing, but it's just still like using the term imp and not doing Mixies. They could have called these guys anything else. Like, why call them an imp? Just to get people's
Critters or
hopes up for
whatever.
that.
Yeah.
What?
I understand your point. I feel like you know,
Like, there's
I
nothing wrong with these guys, but call them anything but imps. That's the that's the thing.
I mean, imps are a specific type of creature in
Yeah.
like folklore and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
yes, in terms of DC Comics lore, imps, refer to Mixospitalic and Batmite, so I understand that, maybe Gunn could have made the distinctions clear
And
between.
he's been making a very big deal about Batmite is like not it's like one of the few things that was not canon going into the DC universe because presumably he has plans for the Mixospitalic and the Batmites, if at all. We don't know,
Yeah.
but still, I just feel I don't know if that or he's going to really have to stress the whole fifth dimensional imp distinction. Maybe I don't know. It just kind of bugs me. It's a pet peeve, but it's nothing really against the episode. So I'm a little let down by the Mixie door seemingly closed. But it's a horrific scene, man. I love the detail that Flory, he's busting Cupid doll's chops and about like throwing up on the stripper. And it's such a seemingly it's a classic scene, and it's just like okay, just Flory just again the whole machismo on this guy, just like they. But again, the idea Flory is basically season one Peacemaker, but he really does care for the people he's given these offensive nicknames to. He really does care about them,
Yeah,
and it's
and he cares about doing things by the book,
yeah,
which.
which is great. I love that with his character. That's James Gunn's kind of style to a T, where the character might be I don't know seemingly offensive or seemingly is kind of
Boorish.
one way, yeah,
Yeah.
boorish or is one way. But again, there's the depth of emotion and this relatability to them otherwise. And of course, Tim Meadows I can't say I love like a lot of people. I love Tim Meadows from a comedic standpoint, and I love the idea across the board. I love when we can take comedic actor and give them like depth and we give them like drama and stakes. It's why the Albuquerque verse works as well as it does because we gave comedic actors like a chance to really stretch their dramatic muscles, and it's phenomenal.
Mhm.
And vice versa. Anywho, yeah, so seeing Cupid doll is horrifically kind of gremlins to death. And just Flory just he just feels horrible for for telling the story that he did, and just not making that like the last exchange that they had, and just his friend has died, and it's very sad. It's a really good again. Flory just again Tim Meadows just killing it.
Mhm.
So here's where we get in the problem spot I kind of have with the episode, the main problem spot. So we have this montage in which sorry, let me so basically horrifyingly we see the horrifying disregard for life that Flag and Argus has, and since he's joined up with Lex, Happerstein, Oda. Okay, first of all, it was really nice to see kind of our Lex crew cameo, like Otis popping up, and I believe so
Yeah.
we don't have Mercy yet, but we have like Luthor does have kind of a helper from the comics, and she was like when Superman burst through his office, when he was with the Michael Ian Black
Oh,
caster.
she
So
was the secretary. Yeah,
I
that's awesome.
believe that's still. I believe that is her, like the one, the glasses and kind of the blondish hair. I
Mhm.
believe that's supposed to be her. It could have been this. There's another lady that's there. The point being, I'm pretty sure she is. I'm pretty sure she's in this. I think the one with the short hair is her. But again, she kind of has like a blink and you miss it kind of moment in the
Yeah,
Superman movie.
but
It's kind of hard to
I
grasp.
think it's awesome to see the Lex Luthor. I think it's awesome to see like small characters kind of cross pollinate between mediums.
Yeah, and I believe we had like a lot of the other kind of smaller kind of like tech guys that were
Mhm.
that were like manning the controls in Ultraman. Like one of those guys, he was doing the cocaine with Happerstein. It's like, hey, is that guy
Yeah.
for the opening? The guy that Luthor was massaging his shoulders. That guy.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's fun that like it's also showing Lex's influence, even though he's not in the episode. But again, just showing that he's really influencing Flag and kind of what he's doing here.
Yeah.
I loved Happerstein's scene so much from Seven. The fact that Rick Flag really took to him because this guy the idea he's like even James Gunn kind of confirms. I was saying this before I even heard like James Gunn kind of say he's evil John Economos. I was saying he's competent John Economos, but yeah, he's very much he's kind of like I was making the argument that Rick Flag is kind of building his own version of the 11th Street Kids. Now, we kind of broke away from that here, but in 7, that's kind of what I was going with the Happerstein thing. That was his John
Mhm.
Economos. Bordeaux was kind of his hardcore. He himself was kind of the peacemaker of the 11th Street Kids.
Mhm.
Judo Master. I gotta forget, Judo Master was kind of the Eagly or not, but he's kind of the mascot. Uh, and
He was
Florida would
vigilante.
have been kind of the Adebayo.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I,
you see what I mean. That's kind
no,
of
no, I get what you mean. Yeah.
now, obviously, given the events of the episode, we kind of broke away from that. But still, though, it's the idea we have like an evil answer to John Economos with Happerstein, and so I like that he kind of like kept that buddy buddy relationship going with that.
Mhm.
However, I do think to my criticism with the episode and the season as a whole, though. Okay, I'm not trying to be like a froth at the mouth fanboy on this, but this is just part of the fact that I really love one. I love Frank Grillo, and two, I love his casting as Rick Flag Senior. I love everything we did with him in Creature Commandos and the fact he worked him in there. His scene in Superman I thought was great. How he was genuinely apologetic to Superman for, like for what was how he was being treated because he didn't sign off on it, he doesn't like it, he knows it doesn't smell right, but he can't do anything about it. And that was like he was very well characterized. This season, up to this episode, I think he was very much in character. We did a lot of really great stuff with him. The revenge, like the father grieving. He's using all this as kind of an excuse, and even the deal he makes with Lex. All this is going great.
Yeah.
But we do this montage in which we see the disregard for life as Rick Flag's getting chummy with Lex's guys, while all these all those kind of underlings are getting killed
Hmm.
as we kind of cameo like little bits and pieces of a multiverse, like the skulls and the spider legs, the black hole, which Lex likes, by the way, which we might want to make a note of, the zombies, all this
Hmm.
is death, death, death. And Rick Flag is such an irredeemable monster in this moment. I feel even if we're saying we're saying over time he may, Lex is kind of manipulating Flag perhaps, or again, I think we save it a little bit with the very end of the episode where, in parallel to Lex, Flag, he did this really big move for a very personal, small reason, which is what Lex did with Superman. He started a war and everything, engineered all of that just for his petty vendetta with Superman, which is, and the idea Rick Flag is following suit. He's done this big thing that's going to impact like the meta cause, all
Hmm.
so he could, get revenge on Peacemaker for Ricky. I like that tracks and that's fine,
Uh-huh.
but just the way in which it just felt a little cartoonish and out of character for him. Is he's so easily swayed, and it's not like an over realization. Even if it's a montage, it just felt he was so out of character. And we even have a character call it out later with the Secretary of Defense, like you're doing Lex's bidding. And it's just I don't know. It seems like Rick Flag's been very easily swayed, and we've done this kind of like Creature Commandos. I think we made a really good case for him being swayed, and this was kind of like we're pulling the same
Well,
hat
I
trick.
mean, Gunn has mentioned that that's sort of Rick's fault is that he thinks he's smarter than Amanda Waller, but he's not. Like he's trying to be a big player and chess master, but he's just a few steps or a few levels below Amanda. Thus, he's more. He thinks he's the one moving the pieces, but he's really being manipulated by the true, chess masters, which in this case is Lex.
Yeah, I still wish we didn't make it like just as like like him just like
As
laughing
as
and having a good
callous as it
time while
is,
people are actually dying. It made him look really bad.
yeah, I think also it's like for Rick, it's one thing to be against Peacemaker, but it's interesting that like he never also thinks about getting back at Waller.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's something that will be followed upon in the Waller show or in Checkmate. I think it's also a missed opportunity that like Leo, like out of bio, she's wanting to be her own like spy agency,
hmm
and she never crosses paths with Rick Flag Senior. Like, wouldn't it have been interesting for them to have a conversation and think it's like, maybe Rick Flag Senior like has some of animosity, but upon interacting with her, it's like, oh, she's not her mom, and specifically went against her mom, and maybe has some level of respect, or even that maybe
Well, I
you know,
mean, she took him. She took her mom down, which I think Rick Flag. I think it's kind of self-explanatory. Okay, well, she went against Waller, so he's
that's the
fine
thing.
with it.
It's crazy to me that like if Rick Flag Senior is wanting to utilize Harcourt and manipulate her connection with his son. It's crazy that he didn't think to do the same thing with Adebayo and give her the resources that she so needs, and then have her be under his wing or influence.
That's a good point. Yeah, that would have tracked. That probably would have tracked. Yeah. Anyway, Let's see. Now, so the one thing I do want to acknowledge of the whole, some people are like responding like one or two ways to the Rick Flag thing. They're either agreeing like, but full heartedly, like basically in the whole like, oh, James Gunn really biffed it with the finale. Look at that Rick Flag, he murdered the character, which kind of think is an overreaction. On the flip side,
Mm.
people are saying, did you even watch Creature Commandos? Of course he's gonna be anti-meta. This is all tracking. Come down a little in the middle here. I never thought about it, but I mean, to a degree, and I mean, I think Creature Commandos season 2 would probably illuminate this. Who knows? I mean, given Rick Flake's promotion, I don't know if he's going to be in Creature Commandos. That's what I'm getting at. Is that the way Creature Commandos ends? Rick Flag is taken out of the action, and he's probably going to find out about the princess and whether he believes it or not. The reason which she died.
Mm-hmm.
Being all the the switcheroos and everything that happened in that finale, which I mean I liked, but the point being it is a question of like, does that kind of turn him against metas? Because he kind of forged the connection there. Like all the metas is just kind of done over, and he's probably not going to be in, or at least he's not going to be leading the commandos. Whether
Yeah,
he's going to be still calling the shots on that.
I think him having anti-meta human sentiments, I think I could understand that maybe like, oh, it's honestly, I don't know if it's in or out of character. It's more like it just never really.
It's very unexplained because again, we don't know. We never checked in with him at the end of Creature Commandos. So it's a big blind spot.
I think it would have been interesting if had the beginning Creature Commanders throughout. It's like he has very strong meta-human prejudices, and it could have been as much of a dick to his teammates. And then for as much as people say like, oh, these are these monsters of the team, maybe it would have been cool for Rick Flag Sr. to have been the monster himself, or just been the one that's maybe not the most moral, and then that would have been the subversion of it all. But the fact that Rick Flag Sr. was kind of like a cool guy, or just
I really loved his dynamic with the meta people on the team. I really loved that.
But the thing is the season never really forces him to go down the path of anti-meta human sentiments. Yeah. And then Superman, it's like maybe you could argue that he's like, oh, Superman, like maybe
he seemed really cool with Superman, but then we
but then
leave
he's
it up
the
in the
one
air.
that
Like
takes Superman to the interdimensional prison. So it's like, does he really feel bad for Superman?
He does. He said he was sorry about it. I believe him.
I mean, and then in the end, he's not too happy about what happened.
Now that's the turning point. That's the part. That's where things get fuzzy.
The thing is, if that's a turning point, I feel like it's a turning point. I'm like, hey, metahumans need to be pushed back. But I feel like maybe you not being happy about how things turn out in Markovia or Borevia and Jaranpur doesn't necessarily transfer you to be just like bigoted or prejudiced towards metahumans as a group or a class. Because you could because I feel like for Rick Flag, he probably wasn't too personally like in approval about Bravia invading Jaranpur, but had to kind of follow the government line.
Yeah,
but I just feel like going from hey, I think metahumans went too far in interfering in a conflict that like I could understand people not being satisfied with, to hey, this group cannot be contained and they need to be put in basically like.
Because they did. Hawkgirl killed the world leader, so
yeah, but
who now has ended up in the MCU, by the way. Which
no, but I think like having conflicting feelings about metahuman involvement in internal and international affairs.
Yeah,
it really needs to be more to where now your thing is hey, these guys need to be put in Gitbelt Bay essentially, right? That's a huge leap, and I feel like Rick Flag. It's like I would understand his motivations if. In the appearances that he was leading up to season 2, he was involved in events where like metahumans like commit terrorist acts, or he was betrayed by certain metahumans, or his son.
We haven't seen any of that.
Yeah, and so like
comes out of nowhere. He comes really hard, a little out of nowhere, and we're doing leaps with creature commands that we haven't seen. There's really nothing to really base any.
I think it would be interesting if it was just consistent. Like he hates Peacemaker, but he's willing to kind of like let other people suffer to fulfill that singular revenge. And I think that would have been something that would have been really noteworthy and make like I think Rick Flag Sr. could be a bad guy, but I think he could be a bad guy in the sense that if he's monomaniacal, he's willing to throw anyone else under the bus to pursue that one goal. And I think if he was consistent, hey, like, do you really hate metahumans, Rick? And it's like, no, not really, but I need something to justify taking this guy I hate and just not killing him, but making him suffer and not be connected with anyone that cares for him.
Yeah, that's again. I like the end point with that, but again, it's just the whole thing of like the idea of Rick Flag becoming like Lex or like Waller with like all the petty revenge. Which, by the way, I don't remember this. There's a deleted scene
Oh yeah,
from
the clown shirt. Yeah, no.
yeah, which is great, and I still like the look as far as I mean, look, if a deleted scene can be canon, you know, it'd be nice to think that is again all of that because like a little petty thing. That's why Waller essentially sent him not directly, but he kind of sent him to die in many
Yeah.
respects.
No, but I think like I that's fine for Rick Flag to be a petty, vindictive individual, but I feel like to have him be a prejudiced bigot on top of that, that's I feel like one too many hats. I feel like it would
It
have been
really hurts too that he's like dating. He's essentially dating a meta, or at least a modified meta.
no, but I think it would have been interesting if he was willing to throw the metahuman community under the bus just to go after this one person who isn't metahuman. And
Yeah.
I think that's also as equally indicting of his character versus just him being like a regular bigot out of nowhere.
And
You
it's
know what I
just
mean?
yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like again, we did, but again, if only we could have defined that just a little bit to kind of massage it. Because right now, the way it plays, it just plays that he's acting very out of character during that montage. So
Mhm.
he's either being, which now presents this thing, either he's being very manipulated by Lex, which I mean, look, it's possible, but even then, it's like it's really laying it on thick if that's the case. And on the flip side, now people are speculating like, is it somehow Clayface? And you have the whole thing about wait,
Or mind control.
yeah, or mind control, but see, it's like a mind control or it's Clayface, and I bring up Clayface because we still the jury still. Do you know if it's officially been said which Clayface we're getting in the movie?
It's Matt Hagen.
Okay, now they've said the word Matt Hagen.
Like it's not been like a formal release, but in terms of the sources, basically it's the classic Basil Carlos story, but with
Yeah.
Matt Hagen as the name of the character instead of Basil
So
Carlos.
they've said that. That's from an official source. They've said that.
It's not official sources, but the sources that have been credibly reporting, like basically the leakers, scoopers have been credibly reporting on the Clayface movie, have said that it's basically the origin in BTAS
Uh huh.
with Matt Hagen as the name of that character in Clayface.
See, these are the kind of things that it frustrates me about James Gunn in terms of like on one hand, again, he's very open and very like asking they'll answer, but on the flip side, that no one ever asks him the relevant questions or the very simple questions. Like, okay, look, with Clayface, we've had a Clayface in Creature Commandos that, for all intents and purposes, has died. Now, it's not even a thing of like, I know Clayface, he's a giant mound of clay, so killing him not exactly an easy feat. But we saw like a decomposed Clayface body that wasn't moving, and the face was just there and not moving, so presumably dead.
I mean, could there just not be multiple
Well,
Clayfaces?
I know that's the thing. There might be multiple. This is the direct question I want to ask him. Like, okay, look, in the new is the Clayface that we're having, is it the actor Clayface that we are calling Matt Hagen as a nod to Batman the Amateurs, or are we saying, given the fact that we have like a deceased Clayface in Creature Commandos, are we saying there are multiple Clayfaces? Is that like Basil Carlo? Is that Matt Hagen? Like what because is it one of the other Clayfaces that, or is that is this like set? Is this Clayface movie set before he got killed?
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm talking about. Like, he's an origin for Clayface that is in the DC universe, and then he's ultimately ends up in Creature Commandos.
The film was currently being. I mean, the movie's currently being filmed right now. So
That's
for
not even
all,
like a spoiler to me. That's just like,
no,
okay,
no,
which
no, no.
Clayface are we dealing
I,
with?
I think I think Gunn will give more details on Clayface. Sometime in the middle of next year because the movie's slated for September 11th, 2026.
Yeah.
So we'll probably know more in the 6 months prior.
Yep. Hey, well, you see what I mean, though? It just feels like, regardless, now that there's all speculation as to why is Rick Flag acting so out of character. I don't know if that's like the writing or if he's actually there's a point to it or not. It just feels a little sloppy and getting us to like the intriguing thing at the end, and we don't really know one way or another. Like how much of like a character kind of arc with him is this?
Also, another thing that I think is also a sloppy detail is like, okay, Chris is supposed to be set for trial, unless maybe Chris. Okay, unless Chris
Well,
was
he had
actually
3 months.
yeah. Oh, so you think Chris might have been inducted before his trial?
I honestly, it's one of two things. Rohit. It's either I think the way I reading between the lines, what I'd like to think happened is with all the extra money that they had, they hired a lawyer and they got him out of it, and he's fine. He got exonerated or what, or at least released or something. I think I like that's my solution would have been that. Now on the flip side, you could look at it, given there was a 3 month window, which happened before the 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
You can look at it either way. It depends how fast they can like buy an office and get everything set
Well,
up.
I mean, I could buy that like Rick Flag was like that vindictive, that's willing to circumvent due process
Yeah,
and have him be permanently jailed before he even had a trial.
because he had apparently Chris. I mean, mind you, they could easily afford it, but it really seemed like he signed something which I assume was a release form or like the whole like visitation list of some kind. That's how they got his signature, and that's how they forged it on the document. That's essentially how they get him to sign up to volunteer. It was either that or like maybe his
No,
court papers or other.
I imagine when economists put his like fingerprints on the records
Yeah,
that by law they had to sign certain like by law Chris had to sign certain papers or whatever to ensure documentation, and Rick Flag decided to utilize that to have Chris basically sign away his rights.
right. So probably that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so huge violation due process or not. Rick Flag, he's always trying to circumvent laws and everything, which we established with the whole meta prison plan anyway. So
Yeah.
okay, I already mentioned like the montage, a lot of death. Okay, so all of this, so they're looking for them. Basically, we reveal they're not looking for an alternative resource, like kind of a solution to overcrowding. They're looking for a not a survivable, non-populated dimension where they could basically use it as a prison. Which and I recognized this the moment they said it. We're going to call it salvation. Now I double want to make sure I wasn't crazy. And I looked into it just to confirm, like, okay, this is what I think it is.
Mhm.
Salvation Run. I've read Salvation Run. It's pretty good and simple. It's not on Yates, but it's pretty good. And I appreciate James Gunn pulling from Salvation Run. I think that's kind of a neat idea that, okay, we're looking for a prison that, metahumans, or at least kind of our classic supervillains, cannot escape as a solution like Arkham and Bellreeve and all of this. Like, we need a prison they cannot escape.
Mhm.
So it's a very sketchy way of containing meta prisoners, which again could turn into basically a superpowered Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
No escape, but basically it's a lush, it's a lush, seemingly lush environment. But there's no escape. The question though is, so in the comic, and the reason, one of the reasons for salvation, maybe not the reason, one of the reasons, because basically James Gunn, this is the big reveal he was kind of touting off in terms of universe building, is that there is going to be a payoff to Salvation. He has confirmed seemingly, no, it's not going to be a direct adaptation of Salvation Run, so we're not going to have Lex and Joker mixing it up. Given the meta focus, wouldn't really make sense for Lex to be there, and it seems like we're not going to fully do that. And
And
man,
like we're not doing any dark side stuff.
well, did he say that though?
Well, no. So in one of the interviews after this episode, it was so this is rolling so interview.
Yeah.
He was asked whether he's directly adapting Salvation Run and like basically the whole reveal of Darkseid. He said specifically, I'm adapting just the idea of Salvation Run. So
Okay.
basically, having a planet where basically supervillains are really for his take, metahumans, we just kind of whisked off, have no means of returning. And he liked the idea of like what would metahumans do that were just basically on this like abandoned, like lonely inhabited planet. How would they factionalize? How would they essentially make a society? And I think that's a really interesting idea because metahumans kind of being a prominent part of humanity for 3 centuries and the tensions that come with it. What could happen if metahumans were kind of just left to their own devices and the kind of systems and like culture that come about of it? And whether that metahuman society would want to just stay in its own lane or want to expand and maybe want to take over Earth with humans and be on top. That I think is a really interesting uh, direction to go in the DCU.
Right. So I gotta admit, I was kind of hoping that I was thinking maybe it would have been a way like by given the monstrous things that we hear at the end. I was thinking Apocalypse. I think Apocalypse might be around the corner, and we have that Mister Miracle show. Which do we know if that's going to be in the DC or just separate from it?
Unknown at this time.
Okay, we don't know one way or another.
Yeah.
Lots of things. I mean, part of me is knowing that was on the horizon, was thinking, okay, maybe this is our way of kind of like kind of building at the end of whatever story we're doing. Obviously, not a direct adaptation, but yeah, we did pull something from there.
So I have a theory. I'm gonna run my theory here. My theory is that Salvation is going to be revealed to actually be the center from New Frontier.
Ooh.
And so
like
basically
Dinosaur Island, the whole
because here's me out. So instead of Brainiac being the main big bad threat of Man of Tomorrow, it's actually the center, and the metahumans that would be on basically the planet of the center. Like, you don't know if they're just kind of backstabbing each other or they're slowly being mentally mind controlled, influenced to like wage war against one another. And then maybe the end of the movie, whichever the symbiotic metahumans, the good ones, the bad ones, they split off, and the good metahuman superheroes become part of the formation of the Justice League, and the bad metahumans become part of the Legion of Doom, Secret Society supervillains, and Justice League. And then when we go to our first Justice League movie, it's literally the gods being the Justice League and the bad guys being the monsters going at each other. And the conflict will be who will inherit or rule the earth, the gods, the monsters, and basically the end will be either one or both will serve humanity. That I think that makes sense for why I remember a while back, like James Gunn posted like Kingdom Come, and Kingdom Come and New Frontier are stories that deal with like humanity's relationship with its superheroes.
Yes.
And I think that's a really good, interesting point to where like, hey, you have metahumans that want to help people and metahumans that want to rule people. And then how do you ultimately, like, who wins out? And how does the metahuman community move forward from that point? I think that's why it's gods and monsters. People who have power, who help others in benevolent way, are like praised by gods, or power to hurt. You're a monster. You're what children are scared of at night. That sort of deal.
That's not bad. I like the idea of the like how we're justifying gods and monsters. We're paying off gods and monsters as a title. There, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It would that a lot of that tracks, Rohit. It's not a bad theory at all there. So, but yeah, so the point being, Salvation Runs is an interesting. It's not an obvious pull. Like, I think when you hear James Gunn, he's going to take things. You're thinking we're going to do Crisis on Infinite Earths proper. That's at least where your mind would assumedly jump there, especially after this season with the multiverse kind of being
or considering how he likes to go in the more darker direction, like because he mentioned about, hey, for the DCU, it's a world of white hats, black hats, and gray hats. But I could have honestly imagined him doing like stuff, maybe doing a loose adaptation of like Identity Crisis or Heroes in Crisis, or just something that's like more like,
he loves Tom King, so that would have definitely been a way to go.
And I think honestly, this story just kind of feels very much in that vein. It's like, hey, here's basically Gitmo Bay with supervillains. How do you have a sense of humanity in that kind of environment? Or like basically you're just fomenting, like you basically are wanting to do Gitmo Bay for supervillains, but it inadvertently becomes like a rogue state that then attacks like the homeland, whether that's America or the world at large. Because I know that's going to blow back. I know, like, it's not going to end well for humanity with all those metahumans on Salvation.
All right. Oh, so anyway, of course, with that too, again, that kind of story starts with, I think it's like Waller and Flag coming up with the Salvation idea. So the idea, Rick, and tying that into Rick Flag as well makes sense. So again, it's going to be yet another reason for the pull. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now there's one detail though that's interesting. So the whole thing of like if they're going to do like supply drops and stuff for them, because in the original comic they couldn't do that because that would have been like the whole thing. It's like the legal loophole of like we can't do supply drops because that's acknowledging like this place exists or something like that.
Yeah,
there's a better way of phrasing it.
Maybe like it would have either created a paper trail in terms of the getting materials, or maybe legally, if you're providing supply drops, you maybe are creating an obligation to have to render not only food but healthcare and just like service and rights. So maybe this is like, hey, they are now an exiled group that we don't have any further obligations. That if we store obligations, there's no end to them without any due process or whatever.
Exactly. So something along those lines. So that does beg the question here: if like logically we're going to provide those supply drops, or if we're just going to go full on like the comic where no nothing, where like it's like Gotham and No Man's Land.
Well,
Nope.
I think it was mentioned in that presentation that like there's like harvestable food or crops, so you could
Well, I
make
mean, we saw them mapping out the area, but did you see like crops and stuff? Like,
no. As this this world can you can make food, like this food is easy either findable or you can make or it's easy to like grow fruit in that area.
no.
But I guess at that point, like, do you just rely on those people to like scavenge and figure it out for themselves, or is it gonna be like someone there to like grow crops? Or that's the thing where like, I mean, that's something that would be interesting to see because I think there could be a lot of commentary about like, hey, we decided just this group of people with powers to one extent or another are going to not have their due process and be whisked away to a prison where they might not have sufficient food or space and they're basically are just like at each other's throats and there may be potential threats of violence or enactments of violence and gangs and factions. Yeah, it'd be just basically this like powder keg of a prison.
All right. Okay, so we should probably Little Blue brings this up. I'll go ahead and go ahead and say slash ask. I take it you guys are aware that Deadpool was originally considered to appear. Do you hear this yet?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, so James Gunn's actually going to Reagan. I really was elated by this. He loves Deadpool as much as he loves Deadpool as much as the next guy, which is oh my god, that makes sense with the sensibilities and everything. Yeah. So he loved the Deadpool movie and everything. So the opportunity he was contemplating, like in the going through the universe, is perhaps Deadpool might have had a cameo in some way, shape, or form. But a lot of red tape, to
I
get.
I kind of wish the workaround was there's two options. One, you could have done Red Tool, which is basically
Uh,
DC Deadpool,
in
or
the Amanda Conner Harley Quinn comics, we had a character called Red Tool who was
yeah,
very much like the DC parody of basically
alternatively,
almost by name, it's exactly Deadpool but by a different name.
yeah. Alternatively, you could have had Ryan Reynolds show up as a 2011 Green Lantern in one of the doors.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's not Deadpool though.
Well, no, I think
Would
it's
have been
just
funny.
either way. It would have been if you're just doing for a gag, you couldn't do Deadpool. Either of those options, I think the Green Lantern would be really fucking funny.
The red tool is a good idea because here's the thing. The red tool thing reminds me of before there was red tool. Okay, Deadpool did appear in DC Comics one before. I know recently there's the big DC Marvel crossover comic that happened, but
Yeah,
and of course historically, in terms of like something Deadpool would pop up, but way before Joe Kelly, of course, went on to write the best Deadpool run.
Mhm.
Joe Kelly did Batman Superman Annual, which basically there's this issue where Batman, Bruce Wayne, Clark Kent, they're on a cruise together, with Lois,
Mhm.
and essentially Ultraman, Owlman, Superwoman, they crash the cruise and everything, and basically Deathstroke is there as well. So Deathstroke. This is the famous like Deathstroke meeting Deadpool comic in which basically wearing a Deathstroke outfit with reverse colors. So like it was on like the just reversal of the colors, same exact suit.
Yeah.
It was Deadpool, and it was the age old gag of like the whole almost copyright infringement of like Deadpool being inspired by Deathstroke thing.
Oh,
Where
that's cool.
and
I think
the
my son
gag
like the
was
image of that. Yeah. So
so
it's kind of like
Deadpool
yeah.
Deadpool he was there to protect Bruce Wayne from Deathstroke killing him, and every time he tried to introduce himself, he got interrupted.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of along the lines how in I think like Quasar comics in the 80s, like there was this like long blonde haired guy whose
Mm-hmm.
like name is like Buried Alien, which is supposed to be like he's basically Barry Allen post crisis. Or like, you know, I know there's this one Thor comic where like, oh, here's this alternate universe where you have these flashing, rays of different lights. They're supposed to basically be the Justice League and vice versa. So yeah, no, that's funny that's a thing. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah, the modern equivalent to that would be the update on that, giving him an actual usable name would have been Red Tool, and that would have been really funny if you had Red Tool played by Ryan Reynolds, which also would have been kind of like what we did recently with Invincible.
yeah,
Well, not recently, like the season back with Invincible, we had
with
a
the Asian
cameo.
spider, yeah,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Agent Spider.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It would have been. In hindsight, you know what? It really feels to me, James Gunn. I think he was trying to go for a legit Deadpool, and it would have been like an actual Marvel DC crossover moment. I don't think he considered Red Tool. Had he considered Red Tool, I think it might have been possible. I think he might have been able to pull it off, but
Yeah.
it also would have taken focus away. So
Yeah, and also like would Ryan Reynolds have been available at that time?
I mean, he's got so much going on. Which, by the way, have you watched the John Candy documentary yet?
No. What streaming platform is it on?
Amazon.
I have not. No.
It's good. It's really good.
Okay.
Yes, he and Colin Hanks did that.
Okay, I didn't know Colin Hanks was involved.
Well, it's in Colin Hanks directed it, and Ryan Reynolds pretty much conducted the interviews, and he's a diehard because John Candy's Canadian, so he's a diehard John Candy fan. So
I see.
Anyway, plus it always struck me. I'll mention this, and we'll get back on point here. In the movie Just Friends, Ryan Reynolds starts off that movie, and the whole gag is like in the past, his high school years, he was a fat kid, and he basically has a fat suit and everything. But if you really look at Ryan Reynolds, kind of his facial features, and especially putting him in the fat suit, it's like, oh my god, he's dead ringer for he's paying tribute to John Candy, and it's delightful.
Oh man, I think I remember seeing Just Friends like at least part of it like ages ago, and I didn't clock in the John Candy bit at all. So
yeah, I mean, he's put in a lot of John Candy. Well, not a lot. He put in like some really cute John Candy references in all three Deadpool movies, and
the plane, trains, and automobiles monologue. Yeah.
Yep, there's a lot of that. Like we literally have the name of the documentary is John Candy, I Like Me, and we have like the mug that he takes in Deadpool and Wolverine is I Like Me, has I Like Me on it. And like in Deadpool 2, we directly mention like Uncle Buck with the like with the sled and these kind of things. I forget in the first Deadpool what John Candy references we had, but it would probably track that. A lot of Ryan Reynolds movies he tries to work in a little bit of John Candy, so
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what was again? All right, okay. So, look, Deadpool would have been fun, but would have detracted focus. Plus, James Gunn's kind of tribute the Deadpool perpetually as vigilante, especially with the whole like the physical kind of acting on vigilante. Which the idea is that Deadpool can work as a silent comedy character to a degree, even without the motor mouth. At least the way Ryan Reynolds plays him.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great physical kind of He's a great physicality to the role, and there's a lot of comedy to be mined from it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's see. Getting back to the okay, so speaking of vigilantes, Adebayo convinces Vigilante to use the blood money from all the drug dealers and all the criminals that he's like stockpiled it from.
Yeah,
which are making some really nasty comments to his mother.
Yeah, no, I kind of want someone to do like a screen grab of like the amount of all the money that's in the attic, and someone has to like break down like how much money does Adrian Chase have, because it'd be really just to see if he's like just like a multi-millionaire by chance.
Well, you know how you do that. You got to go by like the episode of Breaking Bad where they're laying on the money, and you run the figures on like how Skyler had a calculation for how much money was in that storage unit. So basically, you take that, then you kind of roughly apply it to the space of the room and how many pallets of cash we got.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you'll know. So it's roughly, basically, it's more than Walter White had in that storage unit. That's essentially what he's got down there. So a little bit over.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, there could be. I don't know if there's like the billions might be generous, and maybe it's not as much, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, no, it'd be cool for someone to break down how much money Adrian Chase has in his attic. But I think also what's like the whole checkmate of it all. It's interesting that Judo Master is part of the crew. I'm not super surprised by Flurry joining the group. I am surprised by Judo Master.
Well, Adebayo really, Adebayo befriended Judo Master. Honestly, here's what I like about Judo Master. We saw this in that Adebayo episode, and we kind of saw this where when he was chatting with John Economos in the van, it really feels like the Judo Master, he's just not really good at socializing. At least he does it in a very clumsy way. So like him, like, hey, do you remember when you hit me with that tire iron when I was defenseless?
Mhm.
That was kind of his. That was his olive branch. That was kind of his, like, like, that's kind of how he makes friends. He kind of
I-
brings up like the last thing you want, and how you respond to it kind of like defines the friendship. And John Thomas was
is
more of like a childish kind of thing. Adebayo made a very genuine apology, and it was like, that's all he needs. And they was like, okay, we're friends now.
I always feel like there's certain that Judo Master is basically kind of like Regina George if they learn martial arts from Mean Girls.
Right.
Yeah, like as a Mean Girl, I feel like Judo Master is also a bit of an instigator and shit stirrer. So
Yeah. Okay. Little Blue has a this comment. I think he really wants us to answer. So I'm just going to throw this out there. Okay. So if John Candy were still alive, I wonder if John Candy would have made an appearance in any of the Deadpool films. Maybe as a Deadpool variant. That'd be hilarious. There's a Deadpool variant.
I if you were to ask me, I think he would have either played the role of Peter or he would have played like some variant of Happy Hogan at the beginning of Deadpool Wolverine.
Well, that'd be funny. Honestly, Peter's a really good idea. In
Mhm.
hindsight, it would have been great if, again, the whole thing of Peter is that Peter very much feels like, in hindsight, they would have made him Bob had they known they would be getting other movies. I think they would have, like,
Yeah.
because Bob does appear in the Deadpool franchise, but it's a very much like we slipped it in kind of before the MCU, before we actually say Hydra Bob. We worked him as a mercenary,
Mm-hmm.
as a special forces guy. I would lost my mind. Oh my god, we worked Bob in there, and presumably we didn't kill him. Presumably, we don't know though.
Mm-hmm.
Given he doesn't show up, maybe it didn't go so good for Bob, but fingers crossed. Regardless, Peter very much filled the Bob role, and it's kind of it's a shame. In hindsight, I wish we called Peter Bob, because now we can't call anyone Bob thanks to the Thunderbolts. So unfortunately, that's where we're at now.
I mean, he'd be what the. I mean, how many Peters are there as well? So
Well, that's the thing.
there's,
But that's different, though. That's like he wasn't a connected Peter before. That's an inherited Peter.
I think just certain first names are just more prominent than others. So that's just kind of the rub of the Marvel universe to a certain extent.
Yeah, there's not like an overwhelming amount of Peters in the MCU. It's really just like
I mean, in
one
Marvel
or two.
comics, you have what three or four Peters: Peter Parker,
Yeah,
Peter
Peter.
Quill, Peter Rasputin, and then Pete Wisdom.
All right, fine. I mean, the MCU is like two Peters so far.
I mean,
Well, now three, but I'm saying historically there were two.
yeah,
And technically, that Peter he's in the MCU in the grand sense, but he's still in like the multiverse anyway. We're splitting hairs on. Okay,
yeah.
so anyway, so let's yeah, so out of bio, she has a nice moment with Vigilante where she convinces him to use the blood money for good things. So we get Peacemaker bailed out. He comes and gets Eagly, but he's going to leave town.
Mhm.
Uh, adds, she ends. I was really. This is a thing that wasn't helping the episode's case, and I'm not. I want to be clear. It was not a bad scene. It was well acted, and it was okay. It was fine, but it just felt like I did not give a crap about Adebayo and her wife in this season. I really didn't. It was even like in season one of Peacemaker was an element of like, okay, we're kind of rinsing and repeating so we're kind of padding things out a little bit. Where okay, so Adebayo has a wife, and we have to acknowledge that so we can have a really nice bit at the end where Adebayo comes home to her wife and we have like little dogs and one of them dressed up in a little thing. That's the only reason we really have that in season one of Peacemaker. The whole thing of like you endanger the people around you, kind of, it didn't really the Adebayo like home life was a thing I just never really needed, and this was like okay, we established it. We're gonna mention it here and there, and it's like okay, so we put the nail in the coffin. Okay, for I guess for justifiable reasons at the end of the day, it's like okay, so the relationship didn't work out, and this is kind of it's a sad parting of ways, but it's really just like screen time that we've added, and I think what's really not helping James Gunn here is that all the episodes that people have liked so far have like have been given to like roughly like half an hour, and it's like we're promising the last episode is gonna be an hour, and it's like what are we doing with that extra time? Adebayo's marital crisis.
I mean, my thing is that like I find interest. I think Adebayo's marital stuff is interesting because she's one of the noteworthy characters to be in a healthy relationship, and
Well, not
her.
healthy. It ended.
Well, I mean, like in season one, and I think season two, I think I just kind of wish that like Adebayo did spy stuff, and then and then that was just kind of you're taking her away from like really committing all the way with the relationship, and I think her anything would have been more satisfying emotionally had Adebayo been kind of half in half out and really found a call in the spy stuff. The fact that she wasn't really doing significant spy stuff, it's like, well, I just had this calling, wouldn't be happy, following your dream. And it's like we have like just the one like conversation between like Adebayo and Judo Master and Earth X about the dream part. But for the most part, it's just like we don't see Adebayo doing spy stuff. That's the thing. It's like, why would you, as an audience member, really think that Adebayo could be a spy when she's really struggling in her business? It'd be one thing if she's like doing odd spy jobs, she's good and just doesn't have the resources to do more with her natural capabilities. But the fact that we didn't see her like really show her like prowess as a spy, if anything, John Economos was more of a spy, even though he wasn't great at being like a liar or improv person. Like that's the thing. It's like Adebayo just kind of put to the back burner, and I really don't like that because she was such a pivotal part of the first season, both like in terms of her character dynamics and just the overall arc of her really seeing the good in Chris and making the big decision outing her mother. The fact that we don't really follow through and see like how she's regarded in the spy community, like isn't the fact that she outed this big spy agency and like her mom, like it's weird that her mom like blackballed hardcore, but not also Economos and Adebayo by extension. Do you get what I mean?
Well, what do you mean?
No, because hardcore's in the outs because of like Waller. Like, why is hardcore being punished for what her daughter did? Do you get what I mean?
Well,
So
yeah, but it's also remember like they got the Peacemaker assignment because they didn't like stand up for during the mutiny and the Suicide
yeah,
Squad. So there was
but
already some bad blood.
why isn't John also punished? He was also part of the mutiny.
Well, he was punished. They all got the Peacemaker detail.
No. But the thing was, is that after the Peacemaker detail was done, like Waller still had hardcore on her shit list. But why isn't Economos on her shit list as well? He was part of the mutiny. Economos was a warden of Bell Reeve, and then after that, he was just an agent of Argus. Why is he allowed to like? Why isn't Waller also directing her ire at Economos as well?
That's
As,
because she knows he wants to leave. Like the punishment is like, no, you don't get to leave. You don't get to.
oh, I
That's the thing because we know he's miserable at this job, and regardless, like what's he doing if he isn't punished? Well, he's going to be like the warden at Bell Reeve, and he's going to be always under Waller, like the job's thumb, knowing he has
I,
crippling
I mean, I
anxiety.
guess, but I feel like in light of how much like hardcore, it's like she's not suffering
The
emotionally.
economist could find any number of jobs that he would
Yeah,
like better.
he's a computer tech guy. Yeah, I get you
Yeah.
mean. Okay. Well,
However, there's the thing like with Bordeaux is like the whole putting up with his crap. It's like not a lot of jobs would do that, so it's kind of a little in the middle there. But
no, I get you. I think it would have been funny if like that deleted scene was put in because then that would have, in my mind, make it so that like like Waller's punishing by John by just basically putting like having him stick into details, and because of how much of a coward John is, he's not willing to leave, and so he's suffering because of his like mental hangups of just not being confrontational.
yeah. All right. Let's see. So okay. Anyway, we have the big scene. This is the big scene James Gunn was doing. This is a very apparently in the whole season. This is the most important scene for him, and I get why it's a very well acted scene. I think it is. I want to be very clear. I think this is like the highlight of episode 8. So I think this was kind of warranted, but maybe not warranted over like 7. But.
Well, I think like Daniel Brooks is like acting her ass off, and I really feel like she conveys like how much she loves Chris, and it's great acting on the part of Daniel Brooks. Everyone's like they're on their A game, but it's like, man, I wish more was done with the crew throughout the course of the season, so that way this emotional moment is a bigger payoff, rather it feeling being disconnected from what the preceding 6 or 7 episodes were, in my view. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's emotionally, it is, there's a magnitude there for sure.
Yeah. And I think like it just feels like Vigilante didn't have like Vigilante is just kind of the mascot, and I think the fact that like James Gunn mentioned that he was thinking about having James Adrian's brother Guts Chase and like Peacemaker's mom in this, and the fact that there's not a likelihood of a season 3 if coming anytime soon. I kind of wish they either one of those two characters were there just to do more, you know, I think especially Gut. I think if Guts Chase was in this season, I feel like it would have been cool to see like how maybe Vigilante like has to grow or change or is uniquely set it apart from Peacemaker or set apart from his brother and all that stuff. I don't know. I think there's just certain things where it's like there was more of a value or priority on certain story beats and just the fun and games of it all. Whereas in the first season, there was a good balance of like, hey, here's like crazy stuff that happens episode to episode, but there's still an emotional through line that carries through.
Yeah, it's it brings back another thing too. Like when they were on the boat, it was like this thing of with Vigilante. Well, we didn't get a lot of development. We did have a nice moment about him and just in passing and kind of dialogue where Peacemaker and Hardcore were talking about him and just kind of realizing, like because he has such a rotten relationship with his older brother, he really looks to Peacemaker as the older brother role, which is why he aims to please.
Yeah, but I kind of wish like Peacemaker. I would, it'd
They
be
didn't
nice.
touch on any of that though, which does feel
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
missed opportunity.
It's like there. It's more talk than seen and acted upon. And so if I think there will be a season 3, which will not happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
It'd be nice for those characters to really hone in on, I don't know, like on certain like defects or deficiencies that occur in the first 2 seasons and really hit it home. I think it'd be nice for Vigilante to kind of maybe stand up for himself or have some level of like awareness that like, yeah, he's not human, but he's just not wired to be a human being. So why is everyone always mad at him to act differently than he actually is? Like that'd be some interesting character stuff that I know Gunn would do such a great job at. But I just think this season is a victim to him having to do a lot at once, having to do this, Creature Commander season 1 and Superman. So I think in the future, I just hope that if he's able to focus on his efforts on one project at a time, that the overall quality of the product is just much better served. Because I think for all 3 projects, even though I like Superman the best of the 3, I think all 3 have significant flaws that prevent or impede them from being greater than what they were put out.
Yeah, I mean the scene itself though is with the acting. I love that. Basically, it's this really raw moment. I just loved it with her acting. I was just like in the moment, like he's a very justifiable, like don't tell me it's stupid. After because again he's been through a lot, and they want to be they're basically kind of having an intervention for him after Vigilante tackles and tases him.
The whole curse thing.
What? Oh yeah, the curse thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's like honestly, even if you don't believe in there being actual curse for Chris, you gotta have to feel for someone that like has not had any positive things happen in his life, right? And so like he might as well feel like that he's destined for things to just not turn out well for him, right?
Yeah.
And I think there might have been a part of him, and there's a certain read for that letter he leaves to the Lemon Street kids when he leaves to the other universe that like it's kind of like a suicide letter.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of be interesting to maybe go in that direction. And they didn't go that far that in the season. But I think season
Oh, he
3,
did kill himself this season.
I mean, in a sense, but I think no, but I think it would have been really interesting to see if because Chris, like when he's just not, when things are not going right for him, he just goes to these like very hedonistic traps of like alcohol, drugs, sex, and all that stuff. Like if those things don't work for him over time, like I think it'd be really interesting to see Chris at his lowest, and then what does it really take beyond just the intervention of the 11th Street Kids? Like what does it take from him to really, rise above it all and being willing to like live to tomorrow.
Yeah, Yeah, man, I just love like there's like such a rawness where like and she claps to kind of cut him off, during kind of the he's just kind of not wall not just again he is coming from a very like he's been through a lot, and I love there's like a sympathy for Peacemaker for everything that he's kind of gone through this season, but
Yeah.
she just really has like a good answer for him there. She like like the clapping, like it's really good blocking, or she's grabbing the chair and everything, and she's just like spelling it out to him very much like every time you go against who you are, people die, and that's the X factor. And that's what he did need to hear in that moment. It's the
Mhm.
idea that you killed your brother because your father told you. Your father told you to, not you. It
Mhm.
wasn't. And the whole thing about and then you killed your father, and you well basically and well basically sorry, I was trying to. I'm butchering it, but essentially, all the bad decisions that he's made are because he didn't really listen to himself and what he wanted to do.
Mhm.
And and then they get to this moment. This is where James Gunn really he really put himself on the screen here. Where apparently the whole thing of like when I'm around you, you're big and you're stupid, but I'm around you. There's not a moment that I doubt you don't love me,
Mhm.
and I can't say that about anyone else, especially after she's kind of like kind of putting an end to the flawed marriage there.
Yeah.
It's like that moment. Apparently, that James Gunn he broke down in tears talking about this scene because that's basically that's a tribute to his father. Apparently, to my knowledge, his father's still around by the way because he was in
No, no, his
Peacemaker
father
season one.
passed away.
Oh wait, really?
No, because that no, no, because specifically, like when there was the release date for Superman, his brother reached out to him and said, "Hey, that's Dad's birthday."
Yeah.
And no, because he talks about in interviews that like about growing up with his father, who didn't understand him the best, but still
Mm-hmm.
loved him and tried to feed his love for comics. And then when his funeral came about, he had like these complicated feelings about his father because
Well,
he
how
knew
recently did he pass?
like a few years ago. I don't
Well, that's what I'm
remember.
saying because his father was in Peacemaker season one. Yeah, his father was like in the during the monster needle drop. It was like in the episode 6 of Peacemaker. He's like one of
No,
the guys in the
August
hole.
29, 2019.
20? No, well, I guess they would have shot it before. Yeah, I guess they would have shot it. Wait a minute.
No, no, Peacemaker. No, no, no. Peacemaker happened after.
That's it.
Uh,
That's not possible. I could have sworn he said his father was in Peacemaker season
no, no,
one.
his father was in Guardians 2.
I don't know. You sure?
Yes.
God, that's. I don't know. I could have sworn like there was like. All right. Well, okay. Well, regardless, though, because his father passed, and obviously it's a very impactful moment for him. And again, you're right though. It sums up like how the relationship between him and his father, and so you really put that on screen there. And it always seems to be a very the father son dynamic very seems to be a very strong thing within his work. Based on what we saw in Superman with with Pa Kent.
Hmm. And sort of the stuff with Jarrell and with Peter with his dad Ego, and then with Chris with Augie.
Yeah,
It's
not on again. Of course, there's some strife with the father, but also again the love, like probably that kind of like shaking him, just kind of like look.
Yondu.
Yeah, but I mean also again, it's throughout all of it. If you think about it, though, it's Quill and Ego, like you said. It's Quill and Ego, and just kind of that moment. But you're right, though. Mainly, it's kind of like what we saw in Superman. Him and Jarrell, having very different ideas for what the expectations for him should be, and then of course like the acceptance of the father with Pa Kent.
It's the rejection of the evil father, even the biological father, the acceptance of the flawed but well-meaning adoptive father.
Yeah, yeah, which very much kind of a theme through the work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So this was, it's a beautiful performance and just completely raw. And I'm sure James Gunn on the God mic was blubbering justifiably, because it was beautiful.
Yeah. But I wish though that the lead up to it was would have made that resonance been more stronger and not feel like, oh, you feel that way by the characters, but I feel like you didn't do the work to make us feel that way 100%.
Hmm. Let's see. And of course, amidst all this, everyone just kind of admitting, they love the guy, and then Hardcore, admits that the boat did in fact mean something.
Mm-hmm.
kiss on the boat, which that was another thing too. I initially, I think we all kind of assumed one night stand, like on a like they went like a they crashed the party on like a yacht or something or a boat or something.
Or
And
they
then
got really drunk, and
yeah,
then
they got really drunk and then, but again, I like this. I did not expect where this episode went at all. Like they went to a Big Belly Burger and then they went on up like a rock and roll cruise.
Mhm.
And then they shared a kiss, and that was it. And then she kind of got scared and she left. Like that's great, and
Yeah.
that's.
And I think with light of what we know with her and Rick Flag Jr., it's like it's breaking, it's opening her heart to someone that killed someone that she really cared about, and that's kind of a complicated thing to really process. So I
Yeah.
can imagine Hark, like, beyond just Harker being as messed up as she is, like that's kind of a really complicated thing to really grapple with, because the fact that like Rick Flags Jr. and Peacemaker are so different from people, but they do come from a certain place. I think when you think about it, it's like with whatever relationship she had with Rick Flag Jr., it's like they may have been good friends and they may have had like a sexual chemistry, but would Rick Flag Jr. really be said to have loved Emilia the way that Peacemaker does? And does the fact that Peacemaker loves Emilia reflect the fact that both Peacemaker and Hardcore are very much similar individuals?
I mean, he did fall in love with like a witch, so he's more than a witch. He was like the enchantress, but I'm just saying.
I mean, I always feel like in retrospect that Rick Flag Jr. Is kind of really like basically a womanizer. That is good.
He's his father's son.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because I think, so I don't know if you saw this in one of the recap podcasts, or like James Gunn mentioned that, hey, if you watch the Suicide Squad, like look at how Rick Flag Jr. is thinking of his relations with the prostitutes or the women at that one bar versus like Peacemaker and Bloodsport. And in this case, it's like Bloodsport is probably just gonna chill at his room, whereas Peacemaker and or more likely Rick Flag Jr. is gonna hook up with one of these women. So yeah, Rick Flag Jr. Senior, they're just guys that are good soldiers and bro to their men, but love the ladies.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
All right, let's see. So,
it's the yellow shirt. That's the thing that gets them.
yeah, chicks dig a fellow in yellow.
Yeah.
So, let's see. So we have the Foxy Shazam concert. This is another gripe that people have been kind of having. That, okay, look, we made a glorified music video with the. Now, to be fair, okay,
Mm-hmm.
James Gunn loves to end big on music, and does make this is like a logical place you want to end with the music. Where okay, we're gonna have like our big showstopper that, and we're gonna have to work in Foxy Shazam somewhere, like we did in the season one finale. We worked in the the Invisible Bone song,
Mm-hmm.
and into the finale in a really impactful way that pays off the intro, which is what we did there. We had like the inverted, darker version of it when everything was going bad, and here we have like this is the opposite. Everything's going great, and the idea being Hardcore likes Foxy Shazam. That's her band,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a good time. Everything's going right. Look, and Hind again, it's based on the fact it's like a lot of dialogue scenes, and we have the music and everything. And as per James Gunn's usual Neil drops, people basically made the complaints like it's a lot of montages and music videos and stuff. And I mean, I don't, given the content that we have during a lot of this, again, my exception being that montage during the during the multiverse exploration because Rick Flag's out of character.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're right. The QUC exploration, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so besides that, I mean, overall, I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but because we see everything, them setting up shop for Checkmate. Of course, it being Checkmate was pretty cool. My buddy at work called that and was like, "Okay, yeah, we're doing Checkmate, all right." I mean, I was thinking like, I don't know if we're gonna like do Checkmate, at least not yet, but like, okay, yep, he's right, doing Checkmate.
Yeah.
So we got Flora, we got Bordeaux, we got Judo Master, leaving Argus to help found Checkmate with all that drug money.
Yeah.
They really nice bit with Economos and Eagly. Eagly is like putting his wing on Economos' shoulder, a really friendly gesture, which I loved.
That was that. I like that moment. It was funny the interaction with Flurry and Vigilante
Yeah,
on Spider Facts. I am very curious. Like, I think moving forward, because according to James Gunn in his Rolling Stone interview, Peacemaker's fate will not be addressed in Man of Tomorrow. So either the elementary kids save Peacemaker in like a checkmate show, or maybe in Waller and or both. Like maybe it's a case where like Adebayo will be a significant part of Waller, and like her will Adebayo will try to reach out to Waller to get resources or whatever, or something to like get access to salvation, and then checkmate will be them like rescuing Chris from salvation. Because I don't know how Peacemaker's fate won't be addressed in Man of Tomorrow if Peacemaker's not gonna just be saved like in another show. Or maybe he'll just be one of many people on that show and then he'll be saved afterwards. I don't know how it'll work out, but
All right, so originally when he wrote it, the ending was going to be like the happy-go-lucky. We found it, checkmate. We had the Foxy Shazam play, and everything goes great, and that would have been
yeah.
the end of it. But then, we had the whole salvation thing. I think Saffron like suggested, like, well, we do have salvation coming up, and you might want to set that up a little.
Mm-hmm.
So Flag gets his revenge, uses Peacemaker as the guinea pig for salvation, as again his big Lex Luthor kind of like a petty revenge moment. Now, it does bother me that I really wish. I know it wouldn't have made sense, but I really wish they were going to strand him in Salvation and put him in the costume because he's not in like his. He's only in his costume like one time during the entire show, and then he's in like the Earth X Peacemaker suit a few other times. But it's like I don't know. I think would have been full. I think we should have put him in the costume at the end. Would have been like if we're gonna strand him in Salvation, especially if that's like the next time we're gonna see him. Like it opens up more opportunities if we see him in the outfit, like in terms of like this is where we left him and it's his survival gear that he has. He's just completely unarmed for it, which I know is the point, but it just
I
means the
mean,
next time we're gonna see it, if we do see him in Salvation trying to survive, it's like we're not gonna have like an iconic. This is like the wild version of Peacemaker. It's just gonna be oh look, it's John Cena like on an island of dinosaurs.
yeah, I think the fact that Peacemaker he's bought after Suicide Squad, which is what did really do well in the box office, has been mainly a TV character. I think if he ever shows up in film, like I think the John Cena of it all will be the noteworthy factor. And I think the Peacemaker being such a TV character, I wouldn't be surprised if Chris shows up. When he's rescued by the 11th Street Kids, like that'll be the opportunity for him to have his like new suit.
Yeah. Anyway, again, it's like a pet peeve, but beyond that, like,
Well, I mean, James Gunn's point was that the first season was about Peacemaker, and this season was about Chris. So I think that's probably intentional. Why he wasn't.
yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah,
Anyway, yes. As far as Salvation goes, I mean, I wonder if he would go as far as to call like a movie Salvation Run, or if it's just going to be like in the background and stuff. Like
I
it's
think I
just
think it'll be just more of a noteworthy location or reference point, and that set of stories that deal with metahumans, like instead of them being whisked off to Bill Reaver or Arkham, they'll be whisked off to Salvation, and that will be kind of the path. I think by the time we get to Man of Tomorrow, like I feel like the center will be the main bad, and then Superman forces Lex Luthor. I think them working together, they'll realize that like the metahumans that are on Salvation are acting like way more violently than normal, and they'll find out about the center, and then in the process, like I think that's where I think the Justice Gang and Supergirl could come in because there's this like sentient threat that maybe I think the center could just basically like try to mind control the metahumans or have whichever people like be under control, like try to find a way into Earth to take over.
right. All right, real quick, we're going to read some John Kelling, the killer clown from outer space comments.
Yeah.
All right, so assuming season 3 isn't just a checkmate series, maybe it might even be what was initially announced with the Waller series that's allegedly about Amanda being put through a public scrutiny after getting outed, which, yeah, is pretty much we all kind of assumed that show would be.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like that Waller show with the fact that that's like according to Gunn that like it
The
has.
Waller show is being retooled. Maybe it's because of checkmate, yeah.
I think honestly, I think the holdup is like I think why James Gunn's not satisfied with the scripts is because of the treatment of Waller. because I think for him, I don't think he views Waller as completely like being an out and out villain, but I don't think he sees Waller as someone that like she does bad things for good reason. I feel like she's somewhere in the middle, and I
And
think
he
that
saw her as the bad guy in the Suicide Squad. He said those words.
yeah,
He
he's
said
not the
she's the
bad guy, but
villain.
he's not. But he's not the bad. But she's not the bad guy overall. Do you get what I mean? Is that she can occupy different roles on the moral spectrum, and I feel like that's the hard part to nail down is having Waller be someone that could be a good guy and a bad guy in the same scene or same episode. And so that's kind of because I feel like for that kind of character, it's like you had them be bad at the beginning and turn good, or they're good, appear to be good and then to be bad. And maybe James Gunn's wanting to sort of kind of like straddle the balance where you don't know whether you're fully with Waller or fully against her.
Right.
That's why I think it's hard to wrap that because it's not something you could do well enough, especially for multiple episodes. So I think that's for me the biggest thing for why Waller hasn't been fully cracked as yet. Because that's like, how do you make someone be morally ambiguous enough without having people not just turn off and not be interested in that such a character? So
All right, let's see. Okay, I mean, Rick Flag Jr. was actively cheating on June Moon with Harcourt. Who's to say who wouldn't have done the same to Amelia if they were in a relationship?
I read that as that because of the stress that comes with trying to walk on eggshells with someone like Enchantress, that it caused him to like hook up with Hardcore as a stress relief.
Yeah.
That's kind of my read on it. If he just originally was dating Hardcore from the start, I don't think he would have necessarily wavered to like cheat. Or if June just didn't have the Enchantress persona, I don't think he would have wavered to cheat at that in that way as well. But being a woman, it's not too far off for someone who likes women to maybe not be 100% faithful. But I also could think that Rick
I'm sure
maybe
you can relate to that one, Rohit.
uh, nah, not at all. I ain't that cool. Uh, no,
Oh, we've seen that yellow shirt in your closet. We know what you do.
I don't have that much yellow in my closet. Yellow is just a very striking color. I feel like you have to pair it with like the
We
right
know
set.
what you call it. You call it old goldenrod.
Oh man,
The shirt.
yeah, the obstacles or opportunities sign held up by that super rabbit,
Yeah, Ultra Bunny.
ultra bunny. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's see. So I'm assuming Chris will physically come back when we start filling up Salvation more prisoners, possibly with someone major, and Peacemaker is going full Jungle Man thriving. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're probably next time we see him, it's going to be probably almost like a Scott Snyder sort of death metal kind of look for Peacemaker, but again, not as cool because he won't have the costume.
Maybe it'd be funny if like Blue Beetle the animated show has Blue Beetle like end up with Salvation for the reason, and that's how he counters Peacemaker, and then we have sort of the Charlton characters
Yeah,
interact in the way.
there you go. All right, let's see. So actually, it'll be fun if if he picked off some New Gods gear and tack off the dead New Gods on Salvation, making a makeshift Peacemaker suit, looking like his Kingdom Come suit. That would be fun.
Oh, that's kind of like Boba Fett inspired. I
Yeah.
could see that.
That's possible. I mean, you can give him like the New God. That'd be good. But again, we have to do the New Gods though, which right now it sounds like Gunn might be a little non-committal
I
on.
don't feel like the New Gods will be factored into the larger story of the DC. Like, because I feel like they were such a prominent, not I mean as prominent as they were in the Snyder pitch, and I feel like that's such a whole level of mythos and lore, and considering the comparisons people have with the made with Thanos and Darkseid, like I think with what Gunn's into or what his inclinations are, I feel like he's more into like the espionage, geopolitical, like side of the DCU with like Task Force X, the Checkmate, the Janus Directive, stuff like that. More so than the cosmic side of DC. Not that he just wouldn't necessarily like that material, but I feel like I mean, the things that, especially what he's like taking inspiration from, I think he's going more for like what if the government went against the superheroes like worldwide and so on and so forth.
Right. All right, so I want to thank the folks for tuning in. And we had Little Blue, we had Teddy earlier on, and John Kelling for the Killer Clown from Outer Space. So again, so the overall, it was a bit of a de-escalated finale for sure. It doesn't really hold a candle to how we ended season one, but overall, I mean, it was a very enjoyable season. It was definitely event television. You tuning in every week, very much on the edge of your seat, wondering what's going to happen. We're continuing to build the greater DC universe. Again, Peacemaker, son, very dear James Gunn. It really shows on the screen. I think we upped a lot of stuff from the storytelling level, even if I guess by the end of it we didn't send it off with a blast the way we did season one. Season one kind of building in the whole narrative. Season two, upon further reflection, maybe a little more disjointed, but it was a good time for
Yeah.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything else to add?
I just hope that if there is any season three, that we get to maybe see Guts Chase and Peacemaker's mom, because I think those are characters that would be interesting to have explore both Vigilante and Peacemaker's characters respectively, and also just I feel like to kind of have a really strong send up to the 11th Street Kids.
Peacemaker's
Assuming,
mom might have died like like when he was two.
well, yeah, but I think it'd be interesting to see, maybe flashbacks, or maybe there's a scenario where Peacemaker gets to see his mom into some time travel shenanigans. Because I think with so much focus on Peacemaker's dad, I think his mom. I think it'd be interesting to see what kind of person would like shack up with like.
Okay, look, we don't need to know that, Rohit. We need to know how he met Eagly, and there's been talk of like maybe doing a holiday special for that. And if they do, yeah, that's we gotta see
I
how he
mean,
meets
you
Eagly.
could have both in the same season or respectively. It's not either or.
Yeah, sure. So we can see like the 2-year-old Peacemaker having some connection with the mother. Yes. Yeah, because that's what the kids want to see. We want to see the 2-year-old really just bond with
No,
his.
no, he could. I don't know. I feel like with how much Peacemaker's life has sucked, I think it would have been interesting to see what his mother like was as a person. Like maybe in his mind, like
Well,
maybe
probably not a monster, but probably not alive long enough to
no. Like I just some way where he gets to interact with his mom in a time travel scenario before he's even born, or before his mom even meets his dad, or just something. Because I feel like a character like that, there's a lot to explore. Like if she's also as bad as his dad, or maybe she's just maybe all the goodness that was in Peacemaker comes from his mom.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so John Collins' Peacemaker was a good show. Indeed, it was. Good night, everybody.